why I call today's talk CCP and World Control, because of what you said right there. Okay. Now, here's what I want to ask you. We've laid out a very convincing case of where we're at. There's so many other things, but I want to ask you this here. As we look at what's happening right now, and we get into the universities, we get into COVID and all of that, but I don't want to fail to ask you this question. With everything we describe, and we get back to the culture of the Chinese people, what is your sense or feeling, would the Chinese people ever rise against the CCP? Obviously, this is a big question and a big order. It would take the magnitude of tens of millions of people, because the bloodshed would be incredible. I am sure of that. But I ask you just the same. Obviously, there has to be a thirst. The Chinese people are very inventive, very unique, and it's a different environment entirely. But do you ever see that day where they would rise against the Communist Party, where there would be that clash? Is that even a possibility?
What I want to tell is there are always brave Chinese people, although maybe the minority, or maybe you don't know even, but there are always brave Chinese people when they realize what happened, and they try to stand out and fight against this government, and also fight against the ideology. But the thing is, after over 70 years expansion and growth up, the whole government become a huge machine with military and with the high-tech surveillance system, with super cruel, strict organizations to rule people. And we have this in our history, that why they have the Cultural Revolution, because there are people who get education, especially they come back from Europe or America. They try to bring this kind of spirit and knowledge from Western countries back to Chinese, and that makes Chinese Communist Party government angry. So Mao Zedong try to eliminate all this kind of spirit. So they finally have a 10-year cultural revolution and kill that kind of millions of the real smart, brilliant people in China. And later we see the Tiananmen event in 1989. The young students, they calling for the democracy. They call for some kind of change in the system to become more democratic, and then they were killed by military, tanks, bullets. And recently, people can see what happened in Hong Kong. I was in Hong Kong in the middle of 2019, when the Hong Kong Revolution started. There are millions. I mean, there are only 7 million Hong Kong people in Hong Kong, but there are 1 to 2 million Hong Kong people briefly come out, and then they go out to the peaceful protest. They try to show to the world that we Chinese, we Hong Kongers, we want our freedom, and we don't want to be the slaves for the Chinese Communist Party. So these all things, and later again get cruel suppression from the Chinese Communist Party government. And then, as you said, they even just treat the agreement with UK or other countries as toilet paper, because that government never really care about the deals, agreement, or laws. They just care about their power. So when this huge machine started, they ignore anything else. Well, the only thing they're scared of is, stronger power. For example, America and America's friends, when they get together, and from the absolute advantage of the techniques and also the weapons, that will push, the Communist Party, that big machine stopped. Basically, you can destroy it. If not, that machine started, it won't automatically stop. And when it gets more blood from people, it even grows larger.
Okay, so you're saying that, and I love your examples. You and I are on the same page because you just used the both examples. I wanted to talk more about Hong Kong, but also you talked about Tiananmen Square in 1989, and that was on June 5th. And the man, the
Yes,
protester
June
there,
4th.
was it June? Okay, the protester there became known as Tank Man. Tank Man.
Yes.
And yeah, he stopped the Chinese tank and all, and that was really it was so symbolic. I mean, it's symbolic in our country and symbolic in really around the world. So, so are you saying to me, with everything you just said, are you really saying that there could be some hope for the Chinese people, because they're obviously living under a repressive regime and an evil empire. You know, I mean, they are
Mm.
evil. Like you said, there's no love for humanity, no love for people, no love for anything, just the power that they seek. You think there's some hope? You say if the numbers are there, and that the Chinese people, you use the examples, and of course they put down the protesters in Hong Kong, but it would take a massive uprising to do anything to the magnitude. And what would happen at that point? What does that look like? What does it look like?
To be honest, I really think there is a great hope for Chinese people, and because I mean, I'm from China. I'm from mainland China. I grew up there. I spent over 30 years there.
What year
and
did
then
you
moved
get to Hong Kong, Jan? What year
I
did you?
went to Hong Kong in July 2012,
Okay.
right after I finished my PhD study.
Okay.
So basically, I got the whole education from China, and then moved to Hong Kong. Then that is a different feeling for me, and I feel I grew again, you know, in Hong Kong, especially after the Hong Kong protest. So, for example, you see,
Oh, hold on. Let me ask you
you see
something.
Hong
Did
Kong,
you did
yeah.
you have to get permission to get to? How did you get to Hong Kong? Did you have to ask for permission to get to Hong Kong from mainland?
Oh, yeah. So,
Yes.
for me, I'm kind of a special case because usually you need to have your. I'm the PhD student at that time, and before my graduation, I want to pursue the academic research, not just stay in China as a medical doctor, because I can be a medical doctor, ophthalmologist in a good hospital in Guangzhou at that time. But I want to pursue more things, and I don't think I'm used to that system in China. I won't leave it. When I try to apply to the labs for the like postdoc and other further development in other places, I applied to some place in US, and the same time also Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is the quickest. Hong Kong, the University of Hong Kong, that lab is the place that gave me the fastest response. And then when I go there, because it's all about my own connections, and I don't have friends there, and I also don't have the, for example, the supervisors introduce me to the familiar lab. So for me, it's like just look for opportunities, and luckily, because of my expertise and my background, there is some place they accept me. So when I go there, I meet a lot of before I successfully get Hong Kong U, I meet a lot of obstacles. So that obstacle actually is from my PhD supervisor, because when he realized that without his help, I can go to the one of the top labs. Hong Kong U is a top university, right? So he become very greedy. And what he want is like what Chinese Communist Party want. They want to grab the things from the labs in Hong Kong for their own purpose. I mean, stealing. So he pushed me to go there to bring their technologies back and give it to him. If not, he would refuse me graduate on time.
So wait a minute. They told
So
you that? He told you that directly?
he used his way to impact me, and I was too innocent at that time. I don't understand why he said something like this, and again said, you cannot graduate, but if you go there to bring some, for example, transgenetic technology back, yeah, then you can later graduate, and because you can stay in our hospital, better promotion. My friend later told me that his implication is to ask me grab the things back, like those kind of spy scientists in US, and then bring back for them, and then they can get promotion awards, and then they can also help me to get promotion in that system. But I refused because I clearly told him this is stealing, and I don't want to do anything illegal. I go there for research, and I think my work, my outcome in this university already good enough for me to graduate. Because my friend who conduct the same project with me, we collaborated. My friend gets outstanding PhD award. So I'm also the same. But then he just, canceled my thesis defense as a punishment. He thought I would be obedient because I lost my PhD degree. So I will go to Hong Kong and bring something back and beg him to give me another chance to graduate. But I refused. So I left there, and then I go to Hong Kong. I tell my new boss in Hong Kong U that I didn't get my PhD degree on time, not because of my problem. It's because of them. They want me to steal things from your lab and bring back to them, and I refused.
Wow.
So the new boss said, okay, then we cannot give you the equal salary and treatment as a PhD, graduation. But we can give you a lower salary because you already have MPhil degree and you're a medical doctor, right? So okay, I accept it, and I stayed there for another 2 years. During that time, I used my own time and my own money to make more small projects and have the results. And later, when the PhD supervisor reached to me and said, hey, do you really want your degree? How do you think about that? Why do you cut off connection with us? Then I said, if you want me to graduate, I have a new paper and I can use it for the thesis defense. If you don't want to give me, then okay, I will pursue, maybe go to UK or other country to have another PhD degree. Then he finally gave up. He said, okay, if you don't want to go back, then I provide you another opportunity to use your new paper to have the thesis defense. So that's why after 2 years, I finally got my PhD degree from that place. And I realized the corruption in the scientific field in China. This is just one example, and I will never go back in this system.
Yeah. Boy, I am so glad we just spoke about this, because I had no idea this had happened to you. And so for those people who question this whole thing about the way the CCP threatens the Chinese people, and really another thing is they bribe them. They bribe them to get better life, like you say, better position, better degrees. Yes. And if they don't do it, they don't get it. And then to go steal the technology. And that's a problem. And that's all over our universities here in America. That's part of the problem we're having. And for those who deny that or say that's not happening, well, you just proved it right there, that it absolutely is happening, Dr. Yan. I mean, so anybody who questions it needs to listen to what was just said. And you have firsthand knowledge of what happened when you went to Hong Kong. They actually wanted you to steal and rip off the Hong Kong lab to bring it back to the mainland, right? That's what they were asking for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They even cannot make the proper collaboration because this lab is too weak and Hong Kong lab has no reason to collaborate with them. So they just want no cost, just stealing, and behind you they tell you, It's because of we all support you. That means government actually encourage such things.
Wow.
That's why they dare to do this.
Okay. All right. Let me tell folks again now, we are going to continue forward into the second hour here. Just a moment here. What an interesting conversation. Dr. Li-Meng Yan, you just heard. I mean, I'm blown away that this really happened to her completely. And so anybody who questions out there what's happening in these universities and in these laboratories, well, you now know that this really is happening. She just shared with you her story from mainland China into Hong Kong, and the bribery and the threats that were put against her. It is a very corrupt system. We have pointed out time and time again. But again, if you listen just to her quote, you know, they don't care about life. They just want to control the world. Humanity is not in their dictionary. They don't care about humanity. They have a goal and ideology, and it is to control people. They look at people as a means to an end. So they control and manipulate people in such a way. This is really the center of evil. We're talking here about something so evil and so despicable, because we think of life and we think life is beautiful. It is people. It is people should always be put first. And, whether it's the Chinese people or the American people or the Russian people or the Iranian people or whoever it is. But yet that's not the way it is around the world. And it's not a Cinderella world, people, for sure. It is what it is. We're dealing with some very harsh leaders and criminal people out there. And the world is full of that, good and evil mentality, for sure. We talk about all the time here. We'll take a pause here. We'll see you on the other side in the second hour here. You're listening to the Voice of a Nation.
Heart and soul of a nation beckons the call. The voice of our forefathers heard in the distance.
A house divided against itself cannot stand.
To reclaim our honor, our soul. The challenges of a generation call out. Future generations hang in the balance. We choose liberty. This is the voice of a nation.
Of a nation.
Of a nation. Of a nation. And now, Malcolm.
Welcome back to the Voice of a Nation. It is Malcolm Out Loud, yours truly here. And we're talking about CCP and world control today. All roads that lead to the CCP in China that we've been discussing. Very, very interesting talk for a lot of reasons, and mostly because my co-host today, Dr. Li-Meng Yan, is with me. And I call her that because I said, I don't want you to think we're doing an interview here. I want you to come and just let's have a real conversation here. And that's exactly what we're doing. So listen, we've uncovered quite a bit in that first hour here. Now, Dr. Yan, one of the things to talk about here, I want to stay on the universities a moment. And this has been a problem we've been talking about in our country for a very long time. And yet, it often falls on deaf ears, and people don't pay attention. And I always question why our leaders, certainly the leaders of universities, and why our government allows it. But here's the reason. It's because of money, power, and prestige, is my opinion. Very interesting. I want to point out to you these universities, Dr. Yan, like Harvard, Yale, Cornell, Georgetown, et cetera. All right. So there was a law on the books that's been there for a long time, which is any foreign contribution. Now, any country that has a foreign contribution to university that is in excess of $250,000, so $250,000, they are supposed to disclose it. Well, they weren't doing that. They were hiding it. So finally, the Department of Education, in discovering this was happening, they just recent times here began enforcing the law that's been just ignored and ridiculed for a long, long time, for decades. This has been going on now. I mean, for decades. Now they're requiring universities to disclose these contributions that exceed that $250,000. Well, here was the surprise. So when the education department said that they need to come clean, well, guess what? That we know of, how about crazy amount of money here, a whopping $6.5 billion came flooding in. $6.5 billion. And that's only what we know of with those. I mean, God only knows how much more. And who knows how much over the decades. It's probably in the trillions. I mean, who really knows? So this kind of plays to this narrative where China is using the influence to steal the technology, steal all this information. And again, they're using bribery, they're using threats with a lot of Chinese people and putting them, just like they did with you in the mainland when you went to Hong Kong. It's the same sort of story. How big of a problem is this to your estimation in this country?
Oh, yeah, Malcolm, actually, the corruption in the scientific world involving the universities, top academic journals, and organizations like NIH, WHO, all these things, is a national long-term strategy from Chinese Communist Party. So behind all these things is a whole regime support, and that, as you said, for decades, right? Right. So, for example, Chinese Communist Party is good at using psychological way to manipulate people. So they also apply the same strategy to U.S. Like now we are talking about universities. So let's talk about universities. They use these ways, and then they manipulate because university is actually composed of the professors and officers, students, right? So they manipulate these people. And I can give you some kind of example. For example, you are the big professor in some field in a good hospital. And although you are a big professor, you have contributed your life to do the studies, but still somehow, you are not the billionaire, right? And you still need to work hard. And then at that time, China thinks your technology is so useful. How could they get it? You cannot legally transfer it from US to China without noticing the government. So they can tell you, hey, you need the laborers, right? And for you always want people to help you to do your research. And the thing is, your budget is limited from government, from other fundings to afford the laborers. And then China government will send the brilliant scientists or students to you. And then they talk to you that we have government scholarship. And then also when you have the students work with you, you don't need to pay anything. You just need to send a visa. And also when the student or scientists work well in your lab, you also can collaborate with them to apply the funding from China. That will be big amount of money too. And with less surveillance for your youth. And then later, you think this is a good deal, it's a mutual benefit, and you let the students or scientists work for your top technologies, they work very well, and then you develop things together, and China said, very good, and then invite you to China for conference, or they will send more people to approach you, and also later you will feel China government really cares about me, and that fulfills your demand because you feel finally you are really recognized by a big country. And then they will bring you to China more often and also give you collaboration, even establish institute under your name. It's like what they have done to HIV Titan Robert Gallo. So they have done this. In your name. We give you money, we give you people, we do everything you want. So gradually, your technology, your knowledge, your networks are shipped to China. And this cannot be known by the U.S. government or your university because it looks very legal and it looks just like academic exchange, right? Even Dr. Fauci or other scientists said, we do the science, we share to other countries, and this is a human life and all these things. But for China government, it's not the same. They get your technology, they get your knowledge and your networks, then they infiltrate more, right? Grab more, and finally they use it for their own like bioweapon or weapon or surveillance system building. That is because it's communism ideology. They are taking use of your things, and they're like the mafia. They're even worse than mafia. I mean, they have no limitation. So they do anything they want to just to achieve their goal to conquer the world. And they take advantage of the weakness of your own system too.
I mean, technology theft has always been a problem. I mean, Trump talked about it. Every president talks about it, but how much is ever done about it? I remember that story, Dr. Yun, last year, I think it was, out of Harvard. It was the chairman of the, what do you call it? The Harvard's chemistry and chemical biology department, I think it was. And he was indicted for lying. I mean, he was totally lying to our government, to our defense department, about his involvement with, who do you think? The CCP. I mean, there have been enough cases of these that have been publicized that, so the question becomes, one of the things I want to talk to you about today that plays into kind of what we're talking about now. And but it bridges a couple of different industries, and it's that, all right, we kind of play right into their hands, though. I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but when you have an open society like America is, it plays right into the hands of China, which has a very closed society. They don't share anything. They don't, none of this is allowed to be discussed. There's a price to kind of pay in a weird sort of way for an open society. Nobody ever talks about this, but I think it is an interesting thing to talk about when you look at, again, how lax we are. I always wonder, why do our leaders allow this? Well, obviously the leaders of the universities did this because it was very impressive, very, very impressive. They got a lot of money. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars. That's a lot of cash. That's a lot of money with those investments from foreign investments. And so we know why they do it, but all of this, Dr. Yun, is selling out this country. It's selling out the people here, the American people. And the people who do this in our country should be shamed, and it's sinful because they literally are selling out we the people and selling out America for greed and for money and for power and prestige because they don't really care. And this is really the cornerstone of the problem I think we're having. That there's too much of this going on, and it's still happening. Why do you think our leaders allow it to happen? Well, we know why. I mean, it's greed, it's money, it's all these billions of dollars, it's prestige, but they don't put country first here, do they? They put money and greed first, don't you think?
What I want to say is that this is really a big problem in America. Yeah, to be honest. And this should be something should fix, improve the system as soon as possible. And that's based on how much you understand the ideology from Communism Party, and also you understand the urgent danger posed by Chinese Communist Party to you. As I said, this is some urgent thing. You don't have much time. And the thing is, I really want to say that for the people you question that why do they draw that just for their benefit? They sell a country, sell a people. I don't feel these people are stupid. I have no other word to describe them because they don't know. They have some short-term benefits like money, reputation, whatever. Right. But then they sold out the future and freedom of their kids too. Yeah. So for example, when you say China already released the unrestricted bioweapon like COVID virus, right? And then you also, I mean, you these people, you help China, you get money, but you also need to live under the lockdown or the mask policy or even the vaccine. You have to get a vaccine that is still experimental, still not safe enough, still not effective, right? Right. So no one can get rid of this, but just because they're greedy and they're stupid and they don't understand what happened. So these people undermine America. So they to turn to help Chinese Communist Party. And it turns out, finally, if China wins, these people will suddenly become exactly like our Chinese people, become the sacrifice things in this huge machine. No one can escape. Your leaders also need to realize the things. There are problems in your system, and you can fix it. For example, realize that universities are hiding the money from China and push them to disclose it. It's really a good action. And then also have to identify the main persons who engage to help Chinese Communist Party to do the things. For example, the top scientists like Christine Anderson, like Fauci, like Robert Gallo, like people in the Johns Hopkins. Why do they help China to promote the nature origin theory? How much money they get from China? How much connections they have with China government? Even I identified about and published it, right? So these things, once your government really notice and all the federal law enforcement departments start to focus on that, I think still in American system, you have the chance to fix it and to stop it.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly said. I mean, just perfectly said. And nobody really understands the level of danger we're speaking about here. And I love your English when you said they're stupid. I love that, by the way. It's good English, by the way. Okay, good English. Well, I mean, listen, you're calling it, well, you know what it is? It's Dr. Li Meng Young out loud. You know that. It's out loud, right?
Yeah.
Indeed. All right. So, Doctor, we'll have to call you Dr. Young out loud. So, all right. So let me ask you now. All right, I'll come back to this other thing. I wanted to talk to you about this China and the climate alarmism, but let's push that aside. I want to stay with where you just were a moment here. You talked about COVID. Now, we've talked plenty about the unrestricted bioweapon. We talked about the Wuhan lab. This is very controversial. There are finally politicians, finally in America, some that are paying attention and are starting to push back, like Representative Mo Brooks, I believe, right? You said he did recently, and there are others who are doing that as well, who understand. But we've known this for some time. But here's what I want to ask now. All of a sudden, all right, so they unleash this weapon onto the world. We already know, Dr. Yan, they closed down the travel inside of China, but they allowed everybody to travel around the world without any problem and infect the world. Now you've got this Delta variant, which is not nearly as severe. It's a flu type thing, but of course it spreads easy, but like the flu does spread easy when it's out there. Now, as a doctor yourself, it seems to me, my gut feeling is that this is it's being used as a weapon of, this is me talking now, I think it's being used as a weapon of fear. All of a sudden we had this lockdown. They wanted to flatten the curve. America did what we've never done before, really. This was crazy what happened, but they lock everything down. And then the world goes and does the same, everybody around the world. Now they're starting to do it again. Now they're starting to say, okay, they want you to mandate masks. The government comes out, they want everybody wearing masks, whether you've been vaccinated or not. Now what they're doing is a lot of these places are mandating vaccines. A lot of corporations are mandating vaccines. The government, Biden says he wants to mandate them there in the government. The universities are mandating it. So they're forcing people. It's almost like, Dr. Yan, it's almost like they were living in China, where the CCP would said, you will all do this or else. They would threaten them, in other words. It almost feels that way here. It's very un-American. It's very much against our liberties. What is your position as a physician, as a doctor, in understanding this COVID, what it is with the Delta variant, and now their push for lockdown on masks and pushing vaccines? How do you feel about this? I mean,
hilarious.
Hilarious, you said?
Very hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah, nonsense. And to be honest, still that professional word, stupid. So all the people here, they are suffering the unrestricted bioweapon, but meanwhile, there are still the treatment and even prophylaxis, which is also not magic, but still somehow it is based on the safe drugs after decades of use. For example, ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and combined with like zinc, vitamin D, vitamin C, these are cheap and these are helpful. And if you can allow, CDC in US and other countries, if they can allow and encourage the doctors to use it, to develop such protocols, that could save majority of the life, and also that could help reconstruct your social order as soon as possible. But somehow what happened here, like from Dr. Fauci and also other officers, I cannot list all the names, they work together to promote something which cannot really control the COVID, but it can bring some benefits. For example, the vaccine, they try to give you vaccine passport, but meanwhile, all the physicians, all the scientists, if they really care about this issue, they check the data, they would immediately understand how dangerous it is. There are a lot of potential risk. And also, as I said, this is a bioweapon, so you even don't know how many functions are equipped in this virus, and then you still to use your experience based on the nature virus to develop some quick vaccine in a hurry and skip the experiment and not expose the real data, ignore the adverse effects, and you give it to your military people, to your medical staff, and then you even push it to your kids. This is totally hilarious. Just tell you one example. I checked their protocols. They seem to want to give the same dose of the vaccine to the kids as the adults. But we all know when you give drugs to kids and adults, the doses are different, right? Because of the weight, because of the age difference. And even when we are doing the animal experiments, we weigh the mouse, and according to the different weight, we give different dose to test their response. How could in a sudden you just give the same vaccine to children and adults without any safety data, and also you don't know the long-term effect? And you see based on the variants, this efficiency already going down. So what they want to give you the third vaccine, fourth vaccine. So finally make everyone looks like the hedgehog. So that is something, really cannot stop the pandemic. While China stayed there, when China says the things become a little bit better, they still can really smile to you, right? Because they want you to have chaos. They want to destroy your whole society. And then the lockdown, this will give people panic. People are social animals. We cannot just stay isolated in our home. That will make a lot of psychological problems, especially for kids or for vulnerable populations. And also, they want to push everyone to have masks. Masks in certain situations, if you wear proper mask in a proper way as doctors in an operation room, that would be helpful. But it doesn't mean when your kids go out on the playground and play with other kids, they need to wear the mask. And please first tell me, how could you guarantee your kids not touch the mask and then touch their eyes? If not, this mask cannot help them. Why do you push it? You just want to make people to think about, oh, no vaccine, we are in trouble. If we get vaccines, then we can get avoid of lockdown and mask.
Well, that was their message initially, but that's changed now. They started that way. In fact, President Biden